stop. Forget everything you think you know about waiting. The next few hours could change nothing or everything, and yet the universe, or at least your mind, is already scripting a story for you. You may feel certain they will call. You may even believe it's inevitable. But what if that certainty is just your desire dressed in reality's clothes? What will you do when the line stays silent? Here's the secret. The call itself is never the point. What matters is the quiet in between, the space where your mind wrestles with absence, expectation, and longing. That space reveals who you are when no one is reacting to you, when the world is not performing for your satisfaction. It is here, in the stillness, that your psyche whispers truths you have long ignored, about control, about attachment, and about the illusions we build to feel safe.
Welcome to the Jung Code, where we explore the hidden patterns of the mind and the truths waiting in silence. Today, we're uncovering what really happens when you wait for someone's call and how it reveals more about you than about them. If you're ready to dive deep, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the Jung Code for more insights. When we talk about the projection of desire, we are really talking about something very simple and yet deeply powerful. The mind often takes what it wants and assumes it exists outside of itself. You want them to call, so in your mind it already feels like they will. You start reading signs that may not even be there. A silence becomes a message, a small gesture becomes a promise. This is projection. Your longing paints reality with the colors of your hope. It's not deception, it's instinctive.
The human mind craves closure, craves reassurance, craves the sense that our inner world, our hopes, fears, and desires are reflected in the outer world. So when you wait for a call, your imagination rushes ahead. You replay memories, anticipate words, and build entire conversations in your head. You are, in a way, creating a story that hasn't happened yet. Projection can also be subtle. You may notice yourself interpreting someone's tone differently, giving weight to phrases that fit your desire, ignoring the ones that don't. The mind filters reality to fit the narrative it already wants. You think they are on the verge of calling, not because of evidence, but because your expectation has reshaped the ordinary into significance. The risk is that you confuse projection with truth. You start believing that your imagined reality is real. You may feel hurt or disappointed when the external world does not match the one your mind has created. This is why detachment is important, not to remove your feelings, but to recognize that your longing is your own, and the world around you doesn't owe you alignment. Understanding projection is liberating. It teaches you that your mind is active, creating meaning, and that the power to feel settled or unsettled often comes from how you relate to your own expectations rather than the actions of another. In seeing this, you gain a quiet awareness that waiting is less about them and more about understanding yourself. When we talk about suspense as a mirror, what we're really noticing is how waiting shows us who we are inside. The mind doesn't just sit idle while we anticipate something. It reacts, it imagines, it judges, and it projects. When you're waiting for a message, a call, or any sign from someone, that time of uncertainty becomes a reflection of your own inner world. You start noticing your fears, your hopes, your impatience, and even your need for control. Suspense magnifies these feelings because it holds them in a kind of limbo. The person hasn't acted yet, and so your mind fills the gap. Every small thought, every imagined scenario becomes amplified. This amplification isn't about the other person. It's about you noticing how much your happiness, your calm, and your sense of security are tied to something outside yourself. The waiting reveals patterns you might not normally see in everyday life, like how quickly anxiety rises or how strongly hope can shape your perception. It's also why suspense can feel uncomfortable or even painful. The mind naturally wants resolution, a conclusion, a clear signal that everything is safe or moving in the direction we desire. But in the absence of that signal, we see our own tendencies more clearly. We notice our attachment, our expectations, and the stories we tell ourselves about what someone else's actions mean. The waiting isn't empty. It's full of information about us, if we pay attention. The important thing to remember is that this mirror doesn't judge. It simply reflects the way we feel, the way we react, the stories we create while waiting. These are all windows into our own psyche. Recognizing this allows us to step back a little, to observe rather than react, and to understand that suspense, while often uncomfortable, is a teacher in disguise. It shows us the parts of ourselves that usually stay hidden behind action, noise, and distraction. When we talk about the illusion of control, we are really talking about the stories we tell ourselves to feel safe. When we expect someone to call, we often act as if we can influence the timing, the content, or the outcome of their actions. We plan our responses, rehearse what we'll say, or interpret small signals as proof that we have some invisible power over the situation. But in reality, most of that control exists only in our minds. This illusion is comforting because humans naturally want predictability. Life is unpredictable, and relationships are even more so. Believing that our thoughts, our messages, or our patience can shape another person's behavior gives us a sense of mastery over uncertainty. We begin to measure ourselves through it, thinking that if we act just right, the desired response will come. But this is rarely true. People act according to their own motives, timing, and emotions, things we cannot dictate. The problem with this illusion is that it sets us up for frustration and disappointment. When the expected call doesn't come, we feel powerless, anxious, or even betrayed. But the truth isn't that someone is ignoring us. It's that we were never in control to begin with. Recognizing this allows us to separate our sense of self from the outcome. We stop equating patience, effort, or emotional investment with a guaranteed result. The liberation comes when we shift focus inward. Instead of trying to control another person, we notice our own reactions, our own boundaries, and our own emotional state. We learn that influence is limited and that the only real control we ever have is over how we respond. In accepting this, waiting transforms from a test of patience or manipulation into an opportunity for self-awareness. We discover that our calm, our dignity, and our presence are not dependent on external events. They are entirely ours. When we talk about detachment and observation, we're really talking about stepping back from the story our mind wants to tell. When you expect a call or a message, it's easy to get caught up in imagining what it will be, replaying old memories, or worrying about what it means if it doesn't happen. Detachment doesn't mean you stop caring or that you become cold. It means you notice your feelings and thoughts without letting them control you. Observation is about seeing clearly. When you watch yourself waiting, you start to notice patterns. How quickly anxiety rises, how hope can make you reinterpret silence as meaning something, how fear can distort reality. These are not flaws, they are natural reactions, but without awareness, they take over. Observing yourself gives you space to understand why you react the way you do, and how much your mind shapes the experience of waiting. Detachment also frees you from the illusion that the other person's actions define your worth or your happiness. When you stop measuring yourself against whether someone calls or responds, you regain your center. You can feel desire without being consumed by it, care without being controlled by it, and hope without needing it to materialize immediately. The process is subtle. It's about noticing your impulses, labeling them gently in your mind, and letting them pass instead of chasing them. Silence, in this sense, becomes a tool. It is not emptiness or loneliness. It is a mirror reflecting your own emotional landscape. The more you practice observation, the more you start to respond instead of react, and the more you realize that your inner world is far more important than the outer one. This perspective shifts the waiting from a test of someone else into an exercise in self-awareness. You learn that your peace, your clarity, and your strength come not from outside validation, but from the ability to observe yourself without attachment, to witness your own mind in motion, and to stand steady in the quiet of your own presence. The power of the pause is often underestimated, especially when we are waiting for someone to call or respond. Most of us feel the urge to fill the silence with action, sending a message, checking our phone repeatedly, or trying to anticipate what will happen next. But when you allow yourself to pause, when you resist the impulse to act immediately, something subtle begins to happen. The pause creates space where your mind and emotions can settle, and in that stillness, clarity starts to emerge. Silence is not emptiness. It is a kind of pressure release for the mind, a moment to observe without interference. When you stop reacting to every thought and every imagined signal, you start noticing patterns in your own behavior, in your expectations, and in the way you attach meaning to someone else's actions. You may realize how often you tie your emotional state to something outside yourself, and how that need for external validation can shape your decisions and reactions. The pause also shifts dynamics with others, even if indirectly. When you stop pursuing, when you stop trying to force a response, the situation changes naturally. It's not about manipulation. It's about stepping out of the cycle of urgency and allowing events to unfold without your interference. In this space, the need for control loosens, and your presence becomes grounded in yourself rather than in someone else's actions. Practicing the pause is not easy at first. The mind resists stillness because it thrives on action and certainty. But over time, it becomes a tool for emotional strength. You learn to hold your own attention, to notice your thoughts without being swept away, and to understand that patience is not waiting passively. It is an active engagement with your own awareness. The pause teaches that in stillness you regain power, not by influencing others, but by mastering the way you relate to yourself and to what is unfolding around you. When we talk about following your inner compass rather than reacting to external signals, we are really talking about learning to trust yourself in the midst of uncertainty. When you expect a call or a message, it's natural to look for signs, to read into every detail, to let the other person's actions dictate your emotions. But relying solely on these external cues makes you dependent on someone else's timing and choices. Your inner compass is the part of you that knows how to stay grounded, how to respond with clarity, and how to honor your own values regardless of what is happening outside. This doesn't mean ignoring the other person or pretending you don't care. It means noticing what you feel and why, and choosing your actions from a place of awareness rather than reaction. When you align with your own sense of what is right for you, your boundaries, your priorities, your emotional needs, you are less likely to be swept away by hope, fear, or impatience. You become the center of your experience rather than someone else's movements. Relying on an inner compass also brings perspective. You begin to see that waiting for a call is less about the call itself and more about understanding your relationship to desire, attachment, and expectation. When you act from within rather than chasing signals, you engage with the world more authentically. You notice patterns without judgment and make choices that reflect your true self instead of reacting to imagined pressures. The more you practice listening to this inner guidance, the more freedom you feel. You stop measuring your worth by external responses and start measuring it by your presence, your calm, and your alignment with your own values. Even if the call comes, even if it doesn't, you remain steady. The inner compass doesn't promise outcomes. It promises a grounded sense of self, and in that steadiness you discover a quiet power that no outside event can take away. In the end, it all comes down to presence. Waiting for someone to call or reach out can feel like a test, but the truth is, the test is never about them. It's about you. It's about noticing how your mind reacts, how your heart clings, and how easily you let your sense of peace depend on someone else's actions. The lessons are simple but profound. Projection shows you how your desires shape your reality. Suspense reflects your fears and hopes back to you. The illusion of control reminds you of what you can and cannot influence. Detachment teaches you to observe without being consumed. The pause gives you clarity and space to breathe. And following your inner compass anchors you in your own presence, no matter what unfolds outside. When you integrate these lessons, waiting is no longer a trap or a source of anxiety. It becomes a mirror, a teacher, and a doorway to understanding yourself more deeply. You stop reacting automatically, stop giving away your energy to imagined outcomes, and start responding from awareness. Whether the call comes or it doesn't, you are not defined by it. Your sense of worth, your calm, and your clarity are entirely within your control. And in that control, in that quiet, steady presence, you discover a freedom that no external action can give or take away. The message is clear. What matters most is not what happens, but how you hold yourself while it unfolds. Your presence, your awareness, and your ability to stay grounded are the truest measures of strength, and they are yours to cultivate, moment by moment. If this spoke to you, make sure to like, subscribe to the Jung Code, and drop the word "awakened" in the comments to show you felt it too.